Workers today began loading the first of 77,000 crates for distribution to every home in Newcastle. The program is the final stage in the council's waste reduction strategy. It follows Newcastle's decision to reject a combined scheme with neighbouring councils.
We're focusing on the core problem areas with waste going to landfill, predominantly green waste and paper and cardboard.
At present, Newcastle recycles 30% of its waste, well short of the 50% target set by the state government for the year 2000. The council is confident the new initiative will put them within reach of that goal. The council is initially forecasting a 60% participation rate, which will produce 5,000 tonnes of recycled cardboard and paper. However, council is hopeful for a far more enthusiastic response from the public.
And we'd be hopeful that within the first few months of operation we'd be up to 90-95%.
The council has signed a 3-year contract for the collection of the crates. The company stresses it only wants paper and cardboard.
We're not set up to do glass and plastics with this curbside contract. It's only basically paper and cardboard. Basically, that is the biggest problem with landfill today.
The first collection of the crates is set down for early next month. Phil Hind, NBN News. After being able to spend only 20 minutes aboard the Panamanian coal carrier yesterday, officials flew out again this morning to meet its 23-member crew. They returned claiming to have found evidence most of the crew are being underpaid, if at all. The ITF says it was financial worries which helped push 33-year-old Honduran Romel Escalante over the side of the MV Hunter on Tuesday.
His wife is pregnant and she's been contacting him on board the ship saying that, the money isn't arriving home, and that's obviously built up the pressure on him.
More disturbing are claims the crew are being physically abused by officers on board the vessel. Maritime Union officials were again refused access to the ship today, but they say they're doing what they can for the crew.
Some of our members in this port have already come in and pledged money to give them some assistance until they get some money from the company.
The ITF is now seeking legal advice on behalf of the crew, but are at a loss to know what action, if any, it can take. It says it's time the federal government stepped in, but so far there's been no response.
Now, the only comment I'd like to make, that John Sharp was very evident 2 weeks ago and was up front when, that the rescue went on off the coast of Western Australia happened. At the moment, he's invisible.
The owners of the MV Hunter and the Maritime Union go back before the federal court in Sydney tomorrow to break the deadlock over the stranded ship. However, the Marine Safety Authority has certified the ship as unseaworthy. It's not expected to enter port for repairs until tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. Phil Hind, NBN News.
After practising all week in light nor'easterly breezes, a 40-knot southerly arrived for day one of the championships, and before long a few young hopefuls saw their chances of victory blown away. Conditions tested the 200-strong field, local fancy Kurt Lynn drawing the biggest gallery, but a disappointing back nine left the New South Wales representative well off the leaders board with 76. Well on it, Western Australia's Scott Strange. After shooting a 3-under par 33 on the back nine, Strange went further in the red with a birdie on the first, and despite missing a short putt on 3, he bounced back on the next, a drive and fairway iron setting up a tap-in birdie 4. Strangers round of 68 was matched in the clubhouse by Muirfield's Bryce McDonald. A mixed day for the international contingent. Course record holder the United States Kemp Richardson was thinking of those better days. He fired 73. Too many 3-putt greens put paid to the UK's Sean Webster's chances of a good start. He slumped to finish at 5 over, while countryman Robert Wiggins was the pick of the tourists. He fired 71. Round 2 of the 72-hole tournament will be played tomorrow. The top 90 players to make the cut. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
Susie was flanked by the media and well-wishers this morning before taking the plunge into Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit nervous but excited at the same time. I haven't done a marathon for so long now, so it'd be nice to get in the water.
Susie's the first person to ever attempt swimming against the current from Sydney to Newcastle, a 124-kilometre challenge. She'll be in the water for 10 hours a day, staying close to the shore, while carrying the message of Australia Day up the coast.
I think actually arriving on Australia Day in Newcastle would be kind of special.
Susie will stop at Avoca Beach near Terrigal tonight before arriving in Newcastle on Sunday morning, helping to kick off the city's Australia Day celebrations.
That win last weekend has been the talk of the ABL. The Eagles upset Sydney with a 2-1 series victory. The next assignment, Perth at the Wacker. The Heat are on the top of the table, but the locals depart for the 4-match series tomorrow, keen to cause a boil over. The first of the matches under lights on Saturday, while the series concludes Sunday afternoon with games 3 and 4. The Newcastle Breakers are also away this weekend, not on Ericsson Cup duties, instead for an exhibition clash against New South Wales State League side the Coasties. The Australia Day game kicks off at 7 o'clock. And the Newcastle International Motordrome host the Australian Supercross season opener on Saturday night. Among the riders looking to impress, young local stars Danny Ham and Craig Anderson.
Day 13 of the saga over the MV Hunter brought bad news for the vessel's owners and good news for the 23-member crew. The International Transport Workers Federation successfully argued the crew on board the ship had suffered physical abuse and been underpaid. An Admiralty Marshal took control of the MV Hunter immediately.
Out of the hands, out of the control of the master and the owners. It's now been confiscated, if you like.
An inquiry will be held over the weekend into the alleged ship of shame.
The most important question of all, of global importance, why didn't the management of the ship notify shore authorities that there was a man overboard much sooner than they did?
The man who sparked the controversy, 33-year-old Honduran Rommel Salvador Escalante, has stayed with the Newcastle family who heard of his plight earlier this week. Meanwhile, a second ship has been inspected and detained in Newcastle Harbour. Coal carrier the Thomas Hope was detained at number 5 Kooragang berth earlier today for being unseaworthy. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Paul Henderson was back at the track today, the 25-year-old Atlanta Olympian gearing up for one of the biggest races of his career. On Monday, Henderson meets Carl Lewis, and despite the American's failure in New Zealand, he still commands the utmost respect.
Very unpredictable, Carl. I mean, you always respect the man, and you just got to be humble and just run your own race and just think about yourself. I'll be just worrying about myself when it comes to performing on Monday night.
Henderson's recent form is outstanding and he says he's ready to produce his best. Among his recent outings was a blistering performance in the Port Macquarie gift meeting, but it's Monday's showdown that he wants to win. The Olympian has been training hard and knows he'll have to run inside 10.3 to cross the line first.
I'm just going to, take it out and, just just run it very, very relaxed and controlled, and be at my best.
They were all out to stop Graham Jeffers on Newcastle Harbour. The defending champion failed to finish in round 1 in Brisbane and was determined to make amends. Reaching speeds in excess of 250 kilometres an hour, the field had completed 14 laps of the 30-lap final when a mishap for David Trask forced him out of the action and a slight delay. With the resumption of racing, Jeffers continued his assault. First the pass boy won. Those mechanical problems had disappeared and the former Formula 2 champion was set for a start-to-finish victory. The final laps went just as planned. He took the maximum points to jump back into title contention. Fellow Sydney sider Mark Evans finished second. Earlier, the big local crowd was entertained by a blistering performance in the Formula 2s by Newcastle duo Matthew Smith and Darren Mowat. Queensland's John Lintle and his Craft Cobra won the event, while the locals overcame inexperience and a delayed start to finish second and third.
For 6 years, the faithful have packed the Sydney showgrounds for a musical celebration. It's music 1997 style, 35,000 sweaty punters lapping it up. The big day out has been a who's who of rock and roll's up-and-comers. Americans Rocket from the Crypt tipped as the next big thing. Newcastle's ska band The Porkers whipped the audience into a frenzy, a gig they rate as one of their best in a decade.
Pretty good. It's pretty big. Like, we did a couple of good ones overseas, but this is probably the biggest crowd we've ever played to.
But it's not all guitars and drums. 38 DJs spun the latest dance grooves. Outside skaters defied gravity. As the sun went down on the sixth and final big day out, the man behind the festival, Ken West, has had enough. Looking back over the last 6 years, he says the event has championed music once misunderstood as alternative.
You want to know what the term alternative music is? Alternative music is basically people who perform their music who have no idea, not no plan, but no idea that they could actually be wealthy from it.
Blake Doyle, NBN News.
The City Council controls 3 parking stations, 2 in the Central Business District and 1 just outside the city centre. Councillor John Tate believes it's all too confusing for most people. He says many have trouble finding the car parks. His solution? Give them distinctive names.
What we're trying to do is make the city user-friendly as far as parking is concerned.
No decision has been made about names, although a council committee wants names which make a clear link to their location. Councillor Tate says the car parks are already popular with inner city workers and shoppers, but believes new names and new signage will improve business.
So it does indicate where parking is available, and I think that's all part of Council's initiative to try and improve parking in Newcastle.
Lord Mayor Greg Hees is giving the plan his full backing.
We're starting to achieve part of the parking strategy of getting underutilised car parking used by all-day parkers, and which frees up on-street parking for shoppers.
It's expected Council will adopt the plan in the next few weeks. Nicole Webb, NBN News.
It was business as usual for NIB today, despite the bad news for customers. From February the 1st, NIB's private cover will rise by an average of 17.1% or $8 a week. A family with top cover will pay $210 a month. The hike follows a blowout in the number of claims on the Health Fund's 100% hospital cover.
There's also been a change in the age profile. In other words, there's sort of older and high-risk members, and they're claiming more as well.
NIB is one of the state's biggest health funds. In the Hunter Valley, it has 70% of the insured market. The rise comes as a bitter pill for both contributors and management, who believe the rise will force some out of the private health system.
That will happen, there's no doubt about that. Just how large that will be, we don't know at this stage.
A special helpline has been set up for concerned NIB customers. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Westpac closed the only full banking service in the town last May, forcing residents to go on a 20-kilometre hike to Muswellbrook to do their banking. Assisted by Credit Care, an organisation that helps people in rural communities regain access to essential financial services, the Hunter Valley Credit Union wants to keep the town alive. Credit Care manager Mark Genovese says if people need to go out of town to do their banking, they take their business away as well.
Typically people do their banking in other places, so they do their shopping in other places.
He says very little attention is paid to the role banks play in regional and rural areas.
It's not just that you just lose your bank, but the bank plays many important roles in a community such as Denver. They supply and manage the cash flow within the town.
Local parliamentarians Labor's Joel Fitzgibbon and Deputy Leader for the National Party, George Souris, both endorsed the opening, a move that's also won approval from the local council.
I really do commend the governments for supporting that particular organisation. It is particularly relevant here in Denver, as it is to a lot of other more isolated country communities.
A recent report on the state of banking in Australia says banks are set to continue closing their branches. Nicole Webb, NBN News.
The cathedral was left shattered by the earthquake in 1989. Temporary repairs braced the shaky structure for 5 years after that, as the church waited for insurance money to come through. Despite the setback, the brick structure has been slowly pinned back together. Long steel rods inserted as part of its new framework. The restoration work has been the target of a $2 million appeal, boosted today by a $100,000 cheque from the Prime Minister, presented by Senator Tierney.
He's been very impressed with the work that's been done. He's also been very impressed with the dedication of the local community in supporting it.
It's been a long haul for fundraisers, working tirelessly to collect valuable restoration funds.
Sometimes we thought it would never happen, but most people in the community got behind it because they can see the importance of this project.
As the years of toil draw to a close, work of another kind can again get underway.
A cathedral is never finished, and so there's a lot of work to be done, but I think this generation in Newcastle and the Hunter and beyond can be absolutely proud,
The State Premier Bob Carr and other guests will attend a special service to bless the church in an hour's time. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
He just keeps on winning, Ken Grande. He paid $1.70. There were no place dividends due to the small field. The trifecta paid $4.90. The next at Randwick also had a small field, but the quality of runners was first class over the 1,100 metre journey. A good first up win by Sovereign State. It paid $2.80. There were no place dividends. Racing was also at Sandown. Mowad trying to confirm its status as one of Australia's best horses over the 1,400 metre journey. The winner paid $3.50 and $1.30. The trifecta nothing to retire on, $23 even.
It was the entrance they've been waiting for. At last, the Super League battle being played on the paddock. A big crowd turned out at Curry for the Mariners' first clash for '97, and the locals were keen to impress on debut, shrugging off the opposition and almost finding their first. Hunter looked set to break through on many occasions, but just as they trialled pre-season player combinations, Super League trialled quarter time and the sides were sent to the interval locked at 0-0. Doing what he does best, Coach Graham Murray issued advice, and soon as the sides returned, Robbie Ross answered the call, the former Knight and Bronco winning the chase and the hearts of new fans. 4-0, Hunter's backline proved it was capable of anything. Good hands and lightning speed opened up Penrith's defence, Robbie Ross again on hand to clean up the spoils. When the locals crossed again early in the second half, the Mariners looked set for a comfortable first victory. But by sunset, the shine was going off their game and Penrith wasted little time in capitalising. Sleepy defence from the locals brought it back to 16-6. And when the visitors crossed again 10 minutes later, they were suddenly back in the match. Hunter looked as though it would hold on, but with less than 2 minutes left on the clock, Penrith scored their third and an 18-16 victory. After surrendering the big lead, the Mariners were naturally disappointed, but there were some bright points from game number one, none more important than the solid hometown support.
It was an unusual sight on a Monday morning, the face of the Hunters business and industry sectors out playing with the dog. But Graham Jeffries, Executive Director of the Newcastle Regional Chamber of Commerce, has a little more time on his hands after resigning from his post of 27 years. Mr Jeffries says he made his decision 4 weeks ago when it became obvious the Chamber needed restructuring.
I felt that perhaps as part of that development that perhaps one of the parts that needs to be moved from the equation is myself, so that it can be looked at in the fullness of day and the right decisions made.
Mr Jeffrey believes the challenge the Chamber now faces is to make itself more relevant to business groups throughout the Hunter, not just Newcastle.
Certainly I believe that their profile in a regional sense needs to be looked at, and I am aware that that's one thing that they'll be looking at. I think they've also got to see how they are placed with the other business associations of the region.
It's unclear as yet who will take over as Executive Director until after the restructuring is implemented. As for Mr Jeffries, he plans to stay in the industry as a business consultant. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
few decisions that probably should have gone our way didn't, as in 2 penalties, but that's the way the referee saw the game and that's the way we have to play it.
She's rescued the crews of 26 ships and now she's about to be saved herself. It's been nearly 50 years since Victoria 2 performed her life-saving duties, but now she's in the final stages of repair.
Victoria 2 is part of Newcastle's heritage. It was one of the original lifeboats and the last one to be used here in Newcastle.
The restoration of some of Australia's oldest boats is possible because of the efforts of newer craft over the weekend. Everything from tall ships and tugs to paddleboards and dragon boats, transforming Newcastle's commercial harbour into a recreational playground.
That's a great reflection upon the support of Newcastle for this local museum, and again for the respect they have for the harbour.
The Maritime Museum hopes to have raised more than $50,000 during the festival. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
While most consider spending an hour or so travelling to work a bit of a drag, few would complain after a ride on the fast ferry. Early this morning, passengers boarded the Central Coast's first commuter and tourist service to Sydney. They were treated to a little more than the usual ferry fare, and with more ceremony than the standard departure, they were whisked out through Brisbane waters bound for Sydney. Carrying around 40 people, the ferry will leave Ettalong and Darling Harbour twice daily. Central Coast Tourism hoping the service will encourage more visitors to the region and the Hunter. The charter company is already working on a bigger version, which it says will be ready within 6 months. Almost 2 hours later, having taken a special scenic route, the Sea Spirit carved its way through Sydney Harbour. An awesome sight, and just the tonic to get even the most jaded worker to the office on time. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Newcastle may be the defending champions of the World Sevens, but punters believe they'll find it tough winning trophy number 3. The Knights have eased in the betting to 5-1, but they are favoured to make the quarterfinals by beating the 2 other teams in their pool, Souths and St George. That other Widdicode is also gearing up for its season, and for the first time the Sydney Swans will travel outside of the metropolitan area for a trial. The Swans play at Tumby at midday tomorrow, all players vying for first grade selection. The Newcastle Breakers meet Brisbane in just under an hour. The locals need to win the Ericsson Cup match to keep their faint finals hopes alive, while the Strikers will be looking for another 6-1 hammering, just as they did in round 1. The cricket spotlight shines on Newcastle's number 1 oval this weekend. Central Coast plays the ACT tomorrow to decide who'll meet the home side on Sunday in the final of the Country Cup. And don't park your car in the middle of the Newcastle International Motordrome on Saturday night. The Demolition Derby heads another big night of action, while racing involves the Super Sedans and Leader cars. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.